For the Cathar Dominion, conquest had become a boring routine. For centuries, their grand armada had drifted through the galaxy, swallowing up lesser species into their empire. Their methods were brutally efficient, their power was absolute, and their victories were always inevitable. Now they'd arrived at the last glittering prize in a forgotten spiral arm of the galaxy, a small blue-green marble they called Sol 3. We call it Earth. On the bridge of the flagship, the Harbinger of Dominion, High Commander Xylar stared at the planet on his view screen. It was beautiful, quiet, and according to every scan they'd run, laughably primitive. Its orbit was a ghost town, littered with nothing but old satellites and harmless communication arrays. The species below, these humans, were still squabbling with what were basically chemically propelled fireworks. They were a fractured, chaotic race, ripe for the taking. Xylar's lipless mouth curled into a sneer. "Their space is empty," he hissed to his tactical officer. "They have no fleet, no orbital defenses, nothing. They're like infants playing in a crib, completely unaware the adults have just walked into the room." He raised a clawed hand. "Don't waste our main weapons on them. A little demonstration is all we need. Launch a single Class 4 fission charge and detonate it in high orbit. Let them see our fire, let them hear our thunder. Their pathetic little governments will be tripping over each other to surrender." The tactical officer nodded sharply. "As you command, High Commander." The order was given. A sleek missile dropped from the Harbinger's belly and shot toward the tranquil blue world. It was a message, a declaration. And for the Cathar Dominion, it was their first and last catastrophic mistake. The Cathar missile sliced through the vacuum, its guidance system locked and ready. On the Harbinger's bridge, the crew watched with bored indifference. They'd seen this show 100 times before. A flash of light, a burst of primitive panic from the planet below, and then the inevitable groveling plea for mercy. "Detonation in 5 ball. 4, 3, the tactical officer droned. He never got to one. At T-minus 2 seconds, something impossible happened. From the planet's dark side, where Cathar's sensors had shown nothing but empty blackness, a swarm of tiny objects rose up to meet the missile. They were small, impossibly fast, and completely silent. No fusion fire, no plasma trails. They just moved at hypersonic speeds. "Unidentified launches detected," a sensor analyst shouted, his voice cracking with surprise. "No energy signatures. Their trajectories they're going for the charge." Before Xylar could even process the words, the silent objects reached their target. There was no explosion, no flash of light. On the view screen, the Cathar missile simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it had been shredded into a cloud of useless, glittering dust. Xylar stared, his arrogance finally cracking. What was that? Some kind of proximity-fused shrapnel? Primitive, but lucky. "Negative, High Commander," the analyst replied, his voice tight. "The telemetry is baffling. The missile wasn't blown up. It was hit by multiple solid objects. Sir, they were kinetic kill vehicles. Hit to kill. No warheads. Just pure guided force." The bridge went silent. Kinetic kill vehicles weren't the toys of a primitive species. That kind of tech required sensor fusion, predictive tracking, and hypermaneuverable thrusters that were leagues beyond simple explosives. The level of precision was, frankly, insulting. It was like swatting a fly with the tip of a needle from a mile away. "They didn't use an explosion," Xylar murmured, a cold knot tightening in his gut. "Why? An explosive would have been a sure thing." His science officer provided the horrifying answer. "Because, Commander, an explosion is messy, indiscriminate. This was surgical. They didn't want to damage their own stuff in orbit. They just wanted to eliminate the threat and nothing more. This wasn't a panicked reaction. It was pest control." A nervous energy rippled through the Cathar bridge. The arrogant sneers were gone, replaced by a knot of confusion. These humans had just swatted a missile out of the sky with impossible precision, but what was truly terrifying was how they'd gotten so good at it. You see, for centuries, humanity hadn't been looking at the stars. We'd been looking at each other. "Scan the planet again," Xylar commanded, his voice a low growl. "Full spectrum. I want to know where those interceptors launched from. I want to know what else they're hiding." The ship's powerful sensors, which could read the engraving on a coin from a light minute away, swept across Earth and the space around it. The results that came back didn't just break the rules of planetary development. They shattered them. "Commander," the science officer began, his voice trembling, "the orbital plane, it's not empty. We were wrong. It's full. Full of what? Xylar snapped. Everything. Low Earth orbit, medium orbit, even out here, it's saturated. We first dismissed them as debris, old comms relays, ancient junk. But they're not. They're all networked. Thousands upon thousands of them. Imaging satellites, signal interceptors, early warning sensors, deep space radar arrays were being watched by a planet-wide, multi-layered surveillance grid. The tactical display shifted, and the once empty void around Earth became a terrifying web of light, a dense, overlapping constellation of eyes, all staring right at them. The Cathar hadn't just been spotted on arrival, they'd been tracked from the second they dropped out of hyperspace. Every move, every transmission, every tiny heat fluctuation from the Harbinger's engines had been logged, analyzed, and shared across a global defense network. The Cathar fleet wasn't an invading armada observing a primitive world. They were specimens under a microscope. The communications chief looked up, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Commander, we're detecting echoes of our own transmissions. They're bouncing our signals back at us from a network of ground and space-based posts. They're not just watching us, sir. They are analyzing our communications, our data links, our network protocols. They're learning." And suddenly the human silence made terrifying sense. They hadn't hailed the Cathar. They hadn't broadcast threats or pleas. They simply watched, listened, and waited for the aliens to make the first move. And when they did, humanity answered not with a roar, but with a silent, precise, and utterly contemptuous display of superiority. Arrogance dies hard. Commander Xylar mistook quiet observation for passive defense. He was about to learn that humanity wasn't quiet because they were weak. They were quiet because they were busy. "This changes our approach," Xylar said, trying to regain his composure. "They have a sophisticated defense grid, but it's just that a defense, reactive, will overwhelm it. Target their major cities. Prepare for a full bombardment." As weapons officers typed in their commands, a new alarm blared through the bridge, a piercing wail that signified a threat of the highest order. "Commander!" the sensor analyst screamed, pointing a trembling claw at his screen. "New energy readings. A ring of satellites in low orbit. They were dormant, disguised as orbital debris. They're powering up now." "More kinetic weapons?" Xylar demanded. "No, sir," the analyst whispered, his voice filled with a horror Xylar had never heard before. "The energy signature is unmistakable. It's nuclear, not warheads for hitting the planet. Something else. They're designed to detonate in space." The science officer stumbled back from his console. "By the first ancestors. No, it's insane." "Explain!" Xylar roared. "It's a scorched Earth defense for their own orbit," the officer blurted out. "A nuclear blast in Elio wouldn't just create an EMP that would fry our systems. It would generate an artificial radiation belt, trapping high-energy particles in the planet's magnetic field. It would make low Earth orbit an impassable kill zone for months, maybe years, for any ship not built for it. They would destroy their own satellites, cripple their own communications, just to deny the space to us. This was the final piece of the puzzle. This was the soul of humanity laid bare. They weren't just clever. They were dangerously, suicidally paranoid. They had looked at the stars, not with wonder, but with deep suspicion. They'd built their defenses in layers. The first layer, the kinetic kills, was a scalpel. The second layer, the surveillance web, was an unblinking eye. And this, the third and final layer, was a self-destruct button for their own front yard. It was the ultimate expression of a species that had perfected mutually assured destruction against itself, and then simply pointed it outward. The unspoken promise was horrifyingly clear. "You can try to take our world, but we will salt the very Earth of orbit to stop you. We will burn down our own house with you inside it." Commander Xylar stared at the blue-green marble on his screen. It was no longer a prize. It was a death trap, designed by absolute madmen. He finally understood. The orbit wasn't empty. It was a minefield, a graveyard, a kill zone. He looked at his crew, at the terror in their eyes. He thought of his perfect record of conquest, and knew it ended here. "Signal the fleet," he said, the words tasting like ash. "Full retreat. Get us to the edge of the system. Now." As the Cathar fleet turned and fled, broadcasting a panicked warning to the rest of the Dominion, humanity didn't follow. They just watched them go. The nuclear deterrents powered down, once again hiding themselves as orbital junk. The kill zone returned to its silent, watchful state. The galaxy had been put on notice. The quiet, primitive planet in the Sol system was not to be trifled with. They were a species that had forged its ingenuity in the fires of endless self-conflict, a species that valued its home so much it would rather destroy its own access to the stars than surrender it. They had shown the Cathar and anyone else watching that their quiet little orbit was anything but empty. It was a shield, a sword, and a promise that anyone who came to their home with war in mind would not find a victim, but a species that had turned paranoia into an art form and their front door into the deadliest place in the galaxy. If you enjoy stories about humanity's hidden strengths and unexpected victories, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon for more tales from the stars. Let us know in the comments what you think the galaxy's second mistake would be when dealing with humanity. Thanks for watching.